Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. In this video, we will be going over ultimate enchants, what they do, how much they cost, and then we'll rank them in a tier list from S plus to D. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below. Alright, let's get straight into it. Heading over to my island, we have constructed a tier list of sorts. We have tiers from D at the bottom, and up at the top we have S plus. So after we look at an ultimate enchant, see what it does, we will then rank it compared to the other ones. Heading over to page 2 of my ender chest, we have all of the ultimate enchants here and an item to represent them. The only one I don't have is Chimera because it's 70 million coins right now, and I really don't actually need it. I will just tell you what it does. But for the other ones, we have the book itself to look at it, and then an item to place on the tier list. As of now, there are only 12 ultimate enchants. They all, as of the enchanting update, require an enchanting level to use them. So they can be on your gear, but they won't work unless you have the required enchanting level. As we go through the tier list, I will describe what it does, its enchanting level, and then placing it on the tier list. So let's get into it. Alright, so for our first book is Bank. At level 1, it saves 10% of your coins on death, and at level 5, it saves 50% of your coins on death. This book caps out at 10 levels, so this can be any combination that adds up to 10. Whether it's 2 pieces of armor that have level 5, or some other combinations. As long as it adds up to 10, you will save 100% of your coins on death. However, because of the cookie buff, which saves all coins anyway, as well as some other things like not dying, especially because dying in dungeons does not take away your coins, this is pretty useless. However, contrary to the fact that it is pretty useless, it's almost worthless at less than 5,000 coins per book, so it could be a decent option to save coins as a beginner player. Taking the gold bar and placing it on the tier list, I've decided that this is a D tier, as it's very situational, but also quite useless. Alright, so our next book we have is Ultimate Jerry. Each tier of Ultimate Jerry increases the base damage of the aspect of the Jerry by 1000%, and at level 5, it is 5000%. This book is horrible because the aspect of the Jerry is a garbage sword, and it's literally just a meme. There's no point to ever actually use this in your profile. There's literally no point, so this is going to be below D tier. It's just off the board. It doesn't count. If you did want to know, it requires enchanting level 18, which is weird, because it's 2 levels higher than Bank, which actually might have a use, because why? The next book we have is one of the best in the game, Ultimate Wise. Each tier of Ultimate Wise reduces the ability mana cost of any item you put it on by 10%, and at level 5, it's 50% or half. So Ultimate Wise is crazy because it's super cheap. It's like 100k per book, which is only 1.6 mil if you put it on something for level 5. And it's amazing. I have it on my aspect at the end for, I don't know, but for all mages, anything that has an item ability, this is a perfect book. It does exactly what it needs to do, and it's super cheap. So I think this is going to be our first S+. This is just an amazing one. Ultimate Wise requires enchanting level 20 to use. The next ultimate enchant is Combo. Combo is applicable to swords and bows. And basically, every time you kill a mob, you get strength and crit damage, and the tier gives you more strength and crit damage and a higher window between kills, so you can keep stacking it up. Combo really isn't too great compared to some other damage options like Soul Eater, but it is really cheap. It is, I think, less than 100k per book, and it is still pretty decent if you can't afford the better options. The combo enchant requires enchanting level 24, and I think we're probably going to give it a B tier because it is decent, but it's really not too great. Alright, so our next book is Wisdom. Wisdom gives you intelligence for every 5 levels of experience you have on your hotbar. And when you tier it up, it gives you more intelligence per level as well as raises the cap. So this is really good for mages or anyone that just wants intelligence. In fact, my Tarantula helmet actually has Wisdom 5 on it, so I can get a bit more intelligence while in dungeons. Wisdom is one of the best armor enchants because a lot of them are quite useless or way too expensive. So for Wisdom, I think we're going to put it at an A tier. Wisdom requires enchanting 27. Our next ultimate enchant is one of the less useful ones. It's no pain, no gain. There's a chance to get experience orbs every time you take damage. And while this sometimes can be useful, especially if you're on an Iron Man profile and can't buy grand experience bottles from Bazaar, its really only purpose is for making some weird mob farm that gets you a lot of experience. So for this, I think we're going to give this a C tier because it could be useful if you either can't afford experience bottles or are locked on an Iron Man profile, but outside of that, it's really not too great. Also, for such a bad enchant, for some reason it requires enchanting level 29, which is higher than all of the ones we've previously made. Next up is Last Stand, applicable to armor. And Last Stand increases your defense by a percentage when you're below 40% health. And at max level, this increases your defense by 25%. This ultimate enchant is often misunderstood, as the increase in defense is not your entire defense stat, but rather the piece it's on. So if you have Last Stand 5 on this crystal chestplate, it'll only do that 35 defense increased. It won't do the whole set or any external buffs for defense, which really makes it not too great, but it is affordable. And if you need defense, I guess it's a good option, but I just wanted to clear that up because a lot of people think it increases your entire defense stat when it's just the defense on the piece you apply it to. Last Stand requires enchanting level 30. We're going to match up Last Stand with the tier we put combo at because I think they're both decent and cheap, but really nothing too special. Alright, so our next book is Chimera. I couldn't afford a Chimera book just to use in the demonstration, but all it does is every level gives you 20% pet stats added onto your weapon, or whatever you put it on. You can put on fishing weapons, swords, and I think a few other types of items. But basically, what it does is it copies your pet stats, and at level 100, it's 100% of the pet stats. Another thing to clear up is, for example, on this silverfish pet, it would only double the 20 health and 100 defense at the top. It would not double the true defense, as that's an ability. It wouldn't double the mining XP, as that's an ability, and so on. It's only those top numbers. All of those numbers on the wolf, but none of the abilities. From Alpha Dog down, nothing gets doubled. Chimera's uses are pretty limited due to there only being a couple reasons to get this, as well as it being extremely expensive. It's over 1 billion coins at the current price, and there's not even enough books on the auction house to buy it. There's only like 6 or 7 currently being sold, so you'd have to find people privately selling them. Chimera only has a point for max magic find, getting a weird amount of sea creature chance, or a new meta, which is with the Hyperion. If you put Chimera on a Hyperion sword and then equip a sheep pet, it actually doubles the ability damage stat on that now because they buff the sheep pet. But besides that, this is way too expensive. So it is really good. Its ability would be an S+, but because it's so expensive and rare to get, I'm going to give it an S. It requires enchanting level 31 to use. Our next ultimate enchant is one that has been relatively nerfed to the ground, Rend. Grant your bow a left-click ability that rips out the arrows from nearby enemies and deals a percentage of your last critical hit for every arrow in the target. This has been nerfed to the floor. It used to be all of the arrow damage and an unlimited amount of arrows, but now it's far nerfed on the arrow damage and only caps at 5 arrows. So Rend is really not too great. It's cheap now because it's worthless, and I guess you could get it on your bow if you needed something, but it's very similar to combo as it's in a very medium tier. It's really not too great. Rend requires enchanting 32 to use, and I think we're going to put it at A tier, slightly above combo, because it is still decent. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. We're putting it down here. Nah, we'll put it in the middle. We'll put it in the middle. Down to the final 3. The highest requirement for enchanting in the game. These 3. We have Legion, Swarm, and Soul Eater. Very, very good damage, and Legion is the best armor enchant. So, let's get into it. Legion increases all of your player stats besides health for a certain percentage for every player within 30 blocks of you, caps out at 20 players. With full Legion 5 on all of your pieces, as well as 20 players within 30 blocks, you get 28% all stats, which is absolutely insane. That is way more than superior, way more than the legendary Ender Dragon, way more renowned. So this is very situational, however, because rarely are you going to be next to 20 players unless you're in the hub and fishing, which is actually a strategy if you want to get a lot of sea creature chance. This doesn't see much use in dungeons other than boss fights when players are clumped together, but it is still the best armor enchant in the game. Each Legion book is just below 1 million coins, putting each Legion 5 at about 15 million coins. Legion, I'm gonna have to put in an S tier. One last thing, Legion requires enchanting 34 to use. Next up is Swarm. So Swarm increases your damage by a percentage for each nearby enemy within 10 blocks, at a maximum of 16 enemies. When this is fully maxed at Swarm 5 and there are 16 enemies nearby, it will double your damage. This is really good for crowds of hordes of mobs, such as in floor 4, with all the animal stampedes. It doesn't see too much use in regular dungeons or outside of dungeons gameplay, but it is still one of the best damage enchants. Swarm is also just below 1 million coins each, making it decently expensive. However, it is pretty decent, so we're going to give it an A. Coming up to our last ultimate enchant on the list, at enchanting 36, you can use Soul Eater. Soul Eater gives your weapon temporary strength for the latest monster you killed and applies it on your next hit. So Soul Eater at level 1 gives 2 times the strength of the last mob, but at 5 it gives 10 times the strength. So the more damage a mob does to you, the more damage you'll do after killing it on the next hit. So for things like Withermancers or Fells, or anything that does a lot of damage, you will do more damage after killing them. It's very noticeable. Even at Soul Eater 3, which I have, it's really, really noticeable the amount of damage you can deal with it. There was a bug very soon after its release, I think with a couple hours, and Soul Eater was doing hundreds of times more than it should have, letting people do billions of damage with a B. Billions. But it has now been fixed and reverted to what it actually says it will do. Even after being fixed and returned to what it's meant to be, Soul Eater is amazing. It is the best damage enchant other than Chimera in certain cases with pets, but for regular melee damage and for bows too, Soul Eater is amazing. We're going to put Soul Eater at an S+, because it's relatively affordable for how overpowered it is. Alright, so there is one ultimate enchant I actually forgot, and that is One for All. This is because it's not listed in the enchanting skill and has no requirement. And it stands out because it cannot be combined to any higher tier and caps at 1. Basically, it removes all enchants from an item, but One for All, and increases your weapon damage by 210%. It increases the base stat weapon damage. So this is very, very situational, as it's only good for a couple things. Giant Sword it's okay with. Emerald Blade is probably the better one. And so we're going to put it at C, because it's very situational. It's really not too great, and it's cost a couple mil, which doesn't really matter, but it's really not too great. So the final standings of the tier list is S+, we have Ultimate Wise and Soul Eater. In S, we have Chimera and Legion. In A, Wisdom and Swarm. B, Combo, Last Stand, Rend. C, No Pain No Gain, One for All. D, Bank, and just off the board is Ultimate Jerry. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Peace.